While we continue to wait for Creepy Jar's last, as far as we know, installment of Greenhell with the Spirits of Amazonia Part 3, I figured I'd put out another prediction-style video. I call it that, but honestly I don't know what to call it. It might be a part of the next piece of downloadable content, so I guess in that manner you could consider it a prediction. But you could also see this as a little detective work on my part, because I want to stress this, what I'm about to talk about isn't just wild spitballing or me just making a prediction out of thin air. I came to the conclusion I'm about to discuss based on evidence we find in the game, primarily from story mode. Sure, I wouldn't call it airtight. However, once you hear the evidence I present, you won't have to connect too many more dots to see the bigger picture. It was kind of eye-opening for me, and I hope it is for you too. Just keep in mind, there are definitely spoilers in this video, not just with my theory, but as we progress through the video and I explain how I came to my conclusions. But let's get to it. So as the title implies, is it truly possible that Jake has discovered the cure twice? First off, in story mode, you can definitely guide Jake to find the cure, and I've done so many times. But considering his memory issues, could he have already discovered the cure previous to this part of the story? It's actually pretty probable once you line everything up. Let's start with the camp that Jake has set up during the tutorial, which takes place at the beginning of the original story mode playthrough of the game. You're given an opportunity to read up on all the flora, fauna, and basic information regarding the area. One seemingly insignificant, but very significant later, piece of information is a poster that explains native children are subjected to small doses of the poison dart frog venom over a period of time, so they can develop an immunity to the toxins of the frog. The adult natives do this to protect their children from danger, and very well could have been performing this practice for generations. And developers, again, if you're watching, add blowguns please. Stop teasing us. Okay, that's the last bit of pandering and begging, I promise. At least in this particular video. Alright, anyway, moving on. I like the way the developers added this little nugget of information at the start of the game, and few people, if any, would have predicted it was anything more than just informational. But as we all know, it's pivotal in finding a cure to the virus that's plagued the game world. That being said, I'm sure for pretty much everyone watching up to this point that this is common knowledge. Here's what some or many of y'all may have missed. The next part is going to require some fast forwarding and rewinding on the timeline to adequately explain, and I'm going to do my best. We're going to fast forward to the end of the original story mode for this next part and then go back a little. Towards the end of story mode, Jake enters Delta Camp and he finds a mini cassette recorder. When he plays it, he hears this.
Dr. Smith, report number 36. I'm at Camp Omega. Still no sign of Alvarez. We have no idea what happened to him. What's even worse, no one's been lighting a fire in the camp on the island for a couple of days now. Maybe the group has just moved somewhere else, but I don't know. I have a bad feeling about this. People seem to be disappearing. We debated sending Vega to the island to see what's going on, but I don't want to stay in the camp alone. Even with one bodyguard left, I don't feel safe. At least Dr. Higgins is in a good mood. Several hours ago, he called me from the Lambda 2 location. He was clearly excited, but due to the interference, I couldn't understand what he was saying. I think he mentioned children? I'll have to wait until he comes back to hear the full report. Has he found something? I hope so. I've had enough of him, his wife, and this fucking jungle. End of report.
So Dr. Smith explains that Jake contacted him from Lambda 2, excited and trying to explain something to the doctor about children, but the walkie must have had too much static for him to understand. Lambda 2 is way on the other side of the game world, back near the original starting point, and at this point in the game you visited it a long time ago. And when you were there, at this point in the timeline, Dr. Smith is long gone, by either years or at least months. Jake had a spiritual journey there, but no contact with any scientists or doctors at all during the story mode. So it's safe to assume Dr. Smith is talking about something that happened months or years ago. That somehow Jake, visiting Lambda 2, had come to the epiphany that was either leading him to the cure or he outright discovered it. This raises some important questions, but before I get to them, if you'd enjoyed this video so far, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Sorry, I couldn't resist. So anyway, on with the important questions. Were there friendly natives there at Lambda 2 with Jake? Is this when they shared with Jake the practice of essentially inoculating their children against poison dart frogs? And if he did discover the cure at this point, what caused him to forget? We know delusion, but also memory loss are big parts of his journey in greenhell. Is this another one of those examples? Will we discover the cure again in Spirits of Amazonia Part 3 and lose it? Or is this audio recording a kind of Easter egg that will never play out in the game? So we know that Jake and Alvarez essentially missed the last plane out of the jungle. At the end of Spirits of Amazonia Part 2, Jake radios for help using the CB radio on the boat once he attaches the antenna. The person on the other end of the line says they'll send a plane for him. Is this the same plane that the cartel more than likely shoots down that we see in the opening cutscene of the original story mode? It might be, because we don't really have an idea of how long it would take to get a plane out there to rescue him. There could be plenty of time for him to meet up with the scientists, and Alvarez as well, for quest opportunities and the like. So imagine this, and this part is me spitballing. Jake radios for help, heads to the airstrip, and during his journey in Spirits of Amazonia 3, he eventually meets up with Alvarez and the scientists at Omega Camp. Does Jake soon venture to Lambda 2, maybe even by way of Anaconda Island, where he encounters a group of friendly natives that show him how they protect their children from poison dart frogs? Does Jake then radio Dr. Smith and try to explain his discovery and a potential cure? We then may see Omalu Corp contact the scientists and order them home, since they're unable to identify a cure and Dr. Smith was unable to understand Jake through the static of the radio, and assume they were just wild, desperate rantings by him. The scientists are able to get out, but Jake and Alvarez miss the plane. Alvarez doesn't make his flight due to an injury, and Jake either was unable, but more than likely unwilling, to leave. Now let's go back to the aforementioned cutscene of the plane flying by. Could this be the moment that Jake sees the final flight leaving the jungle? And what comes next? Is this the unavoidable dread of him not being able to get the cure to Mia in time? So instead of something physical causing his memory loss, could it have been grief, which in turn caused a mental breakdown? Maybe he couldn't get the cure to Mia in time and she passes away. Jake then suffers memory loss and forgets about finding the cure. So in the original story mode, he's reliving out the events a second time, while in his delusion, Mia is still alive, but in reality, we know she's been long dead. Maybe by reliving this, he's trying to cope with the massive amount of guilt he must feel for not getting the cure to her in time. If this is true, then the original story mode is an even greater tale of redemption for Jake, which leads to self-acceptance of Mia's passing and hopefully some relief for his mental health. Either way, I predict the ending of Spirits of Amazonia Part 3 will cause many of us to want to play the game in its correct order, to see the full story play out on a linear timeline instead of its Pulp Fiction style presentation now. I love stuff like that. If you enjoyed this episode, please check out one of my other prediction videos or one of my building episodes. Thank you so much for watching.